All right, Jamie. So I've listened to all the Inside the 90s thus far, and there's been a common theme, which is about core values. And it seems like it's been kind of a linear path, but maybe it's time to go a little bit deep.
Yeah, I think that I never wanted to lead anyone to it.
Yeah.
And so, it's something I'm passionate about. And as we got into like 2 or 3 episodes, like it was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just knew like it was only a matter of time before we got to the core values piece. And which was honestly one of the reasons for the change in the format here is to now like we've got a good amount of stories going this way. Let's dig into something.
Yeah.
And, for me, the core value is something I'm super passionate about. And, when we started working with you as our implementer, like you led us through that and it was just freaking amazing. So, where do you start with core values?
Yeah, I think it's the core values first, to even just back up a little bit. Core values, we've all know the terminology by now, right? It's nothing new. And we usually know it by they're probably painted on the wall somewhere and they're on the website. But any traditional company, I'll ask them what the core values are. Maybe people can pull out one of what they are. And so it's like this idea that we like the core values should be our handful of principles on like how we walk through the world. And it defines who we are. And so all behaviors, any behavior in the organization that goes on should be tied back to our core value. And it's how we hire, fire, reward, recognize off of these values. So I think even just to like the first step into them, right? The first step in is that core values are discovered. They're not prescribed. So I'll talk to leaders, and I did this myself at first. I sat in with a pen and paper and by myself and was like, what are the principles that I care about? Or what are the principles that are going to define this company? And you do it in silo and you build them on. You're like, man, this feels great. Well, that's a prescribed value. They're not actually discovered and pulled out of the team that we have. And the problem with that is they're not realistic, right? It's like who we aspire to be, but not who we are.
Yeah.
And so we need to discover who we are. And so the exercise is really powerful. So the one thing I would tell anybody that's trying to build them is do not build them in a silo. Build them with your team, right? And you get the team in the room. We typically do it with the leadership team, right? Through the EOS process, we decide leadership team, and then day 2, we're building core values. And what we do is we start by just understanding who are the people that help define who we are today, right? Like who are those people?
Yeah.
We can clone them. We have more of them. Like, man, they're just the people we need to build with. And we get them on a list, right? And we think about characteristics around those individuals. And we all are kind of scribing ourselves, and we throw them all up on the wall, right? And then we ask questions of things like, as a leader, what are the things that you despise?
Yeah, the word despise was so strong for me.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, that's you got me at just that, right? You got to think deeper than what bothers you. What do you not like? What's annoying? It's like what actually despises you. It's the antithesis.
100%. Which that I got to give to Jeff Ruby. That was a Jeff Ruby thing he taught me. That like ask what they despise, because what you despise is like, ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Right. But what's so powerful about it is that when we turn that into a positive, it's much more than just these fluffy honesty, integrity, respectful, right? It's like these like I have a better picture of what we're talking about. So we ask those questions, and then we flip them into positives, and we get those up on the wall, right? And then we just start working through them. And we work through them over about a course of an hour and a half, and just we want to get to the essence, right? Of like, what is that essence of like 3 to 5? The less is better, right?
Yeah.
I always say you remember the 3 Stooges, but you never remember all 7 doors.
Yes.
Right? So like
Larry, Moe, and Curly. I don't need an acronym for that.
Right. Exactly right. You just go
sleepy,
boom, boom, boom.
dopey, mopey. I don't remember.
I don't even think mopey is one. You just made it up. But right, like you just like you want them to be remembered, and like and so. And when you really tie behaviors to them, you need less than you think, right?
Well, something you did, which, and there again, I've done tons of workshops on this as a brand strategist, and the facilitation thing that you did, and I had to get curious, right? Because walked into that room with what I thought our core values were going to be because I was the founder.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And then we did the exercises. And when you, from what I recall, it's all we have our story. I don't know if this is how it happened or not, but I remember like we had our list, me, Warren, and Mark, you'd facilitate it. And you're like, all right, give us one. And we wrote, each one of us called them out.
Yes.
One, and you put them all at the top of 3 columns.
Yep.
And tell me about that process and how that, and where you led us to.
Yes. So the process is this idea that like if we just allow the words to lead us, we're going to lose the essence of what we're trying to say, right? So then you just kind of start hunting. I like that word. I like, right?
Yeah.
Compared to what's the story behind that word. So the process is to go, if there's there's 3 people in the room, right, that are doing this exercise, you're going to go down and say, the first person, give me your first word or the phrase on your thing. I'm going to start there. The next person, I'm going to say, okay, for you, that next word for you, does it belong under the first word? Is it saying the same thing in that bucket?
Yeah.
Or is it's a separate bucket? And I'm going to try to force us to 3.
Yeah.
And you have to convince me why it's 4 or 5, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so like you just go word by word by word by word. And all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, we got 7 buckets, right? Yeah. Like, but there's enough differences that we're convincing ourselves that there needs to be another bucket. So now when we look at it, we go 7. Well, now let's get down to 3 to 5 buckets.
Yeah.
What are the buckets that are the most important to us? And it makes it less about the word, but the essence of the word.
Great. You get these clusters of sentiment.
100%.
And it's like, all right, well, if you would have said, hey, force, rank them, each yourself, and we're going to follow that. It's breaking up of the context of them and forcing them into the clusters that to me was the most powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we got to the end of that, it was like, holy cow, I think we landed with 4.
I think it was 4.
I'm as a word guy, I can't make everything into 3. 4 is like my happy spot. And then
I think it was 4.
But we've got 5. It's like,
but that's an interesting thing too, right? I think we landed on 4. And you get to this point where like, okay, these 4 essences are good. And you leave VB1 and you're like, they need to marinate, right, for 30 days before we come back.
Yes.
Don't tell them. You can talk about them, but don't kind of test them, but don't launch them.
Yeah.
Right? We're not ready to launch them.
Correct.
Talk to me a little bit about that experience for you.
Yeah. So we had, I've forgotten the essence now because we have our core values,
yes.
right? We've had one that went on a journey of itself. So that's our first one, which is today called Make It Happen. And then we have be curious, be courageous, and be generous.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our middle 3. And then the one that was missing that took me may have taken 4 months. It may have been one full cycle where we had the 4. And I just felt like something was missing. And for me, it's core values are something that I can just identify with. My brain's rows and columns, so I can take a behavior and put it in the right one and say, does this fit or does it not? And what I think there's also the difference between what is the founder value and what do you want your company's values to be?
Correct.
And I went in knowing those were 2 different things, but the thing that was missing was something that I value a ton. And that is, it's this ability to show up. We're a marketing firm. It's not about presenting well. It's not about looking good. It's about leaving and the clients are blown away. And so I, marinated in that for a while. I don't even know what I called it. And then the word outshine just hit me. And that was the 5th value for us that we want, when we leave a presentation, when we do work for clients, we want the goose. We want them to be so wowed by, oh my God, this is so right. That it's there again, it's not a pride, it's not an ego thing. It's not over delivery. Mm-hmm. Difference between outshining and over delivering. It's just about really farly exceeding those expectations at every little interaction.
And it's interesting because I'm thinking through what you had before that, right? Make it happen, be curious, be courageous. What was the other?
Be generous.
Be generous. And all of those are very much like kind of how you show up.
Yeah.
But the outshine really talks more about the like quality
Yes.
piece that the other ones are missing.
Yes.
So it makes sense that when you were testing them, you felt like as a marketing agency that we're known by our work.
Yeah.
That like something's missing there. And I think that's what's so crucial is that this transition of our values, core values, they need to be tested and they need to be thought about in every interaction and how we can pull everything together and marinate. And then once we land on them, then we need to transition to this thought of like, hire, fire, reward, recognize everything is built through this lens. And so that's where I'd like to go next because I think it makes them come to life because that's where a lot of teams stop.
Yep.
And the next step is done. Before that, though, just to give some context, in Barracks, we had 3, which was give a damn, world-class teammate, and extreme ownership, which we were, and it's just interesting because you look at them and there's some similarities, but the cultural differences of companies start to come out.
Yeah.
Extreme ownership, give a damn, right? To us, like those two, like we're, me, Tom, and Steve, we're like, let's effing go.
Yeah.
Like, like we're putting the pedal down and we're going.
Yes.
And we need you with us and it's fast paced and we're growing and right?
Yeah.
So that shows up in our values because they're stronger, more meaty, right?
Yeah, I bundle that for us under make it happen, right?
Make
it's
it
like
happen.
that's where all those are. The essence of that is like,
Yes.
all right, we're just going to make it happen.
Yep.
And I like this morning, so it's not an EOS thing, just for cultural, cadence. We have what's called a weekly share.
Yeah.
And it rotates. Sometimes the account team, the creative team. Sometimes it's a core value itself. Sometimes it's a company update, but it's every Friday. And so I had work today. And work is our product, right? It's the work product.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm, when you talk about making it happen and that urgency, like I'm a high quick start in Colby, right? So I am wired to make it happen with one consideration and constraint, which is a deadline, right? So
without the deadline,
high quick start means we prioritize by deadlines. But inside make it happen is embracing constraints. For me, the first constraint is time.
Yes.
For someone else, the constraint may be information. Like I can't start till I get more information, right? But make it happen is all of those things. It's like embrace the constraints, be resourceful. We got to get this done. Rally around it. And then also, and don't get creative fatigue. That's one of the things in our business. Like you get projects, sometimes it's like, I've been doing this one thing forever. Yeah. And it's like, but we still, in order to outshine, we got to show up and make it happen.
100%. And I think that the idea of even when I talk about our values at Barracks or even the ones at EOS, right? How obsessed you are with yours is the right place to be, right? Like, we'll talk about obsession a lot, I think, in this podcast. But this idea that like you are obsessed with your core values as a visionary is a very healthy obsession because it is putting parameters on us and really helping the team to understand what it means to live these values and what it takes to be on the bus.
Yeah.
Right. And people want to be on that bus that have that strong sense of values. And so, so we have them now, right? We're feeling strong. Where do we go? How do we start to activate these? And maybe talk a little bit about your journey with them. Like, how do we go deeper now with them?
Yes, I think there's the artificial layer, right? It's like, hey, we're fist pumping. You lived out a core value, right? And then there's the authentic layer of like, hey, let's just make this real. And I think what is often missed is the 7 times thing, right? Like if you're let's say an employee, not on the leadership team, and these are rolled out to you and you're hearing them for the first time, right? And then over months, you're starting to hear that consistency. And then it can become like, hey, this is just, what's the word? Superfluous. This is artificial.
Yes.
I don't really feel it, right? But then you hire a new employee and they're hearing it for the first time, right? So there's this
Even
spectrum.
Though it's the 6th time.
Correct. So there's this spectrum that you have to understand culturally as we talk about them constantly because that's who we are. We are obsessed with them. And we celebrate when those wins happen. We also hold each other accountable when a core value isn't lived up.
Yeah.
So I think for us, the tangible ways to do that, like for us, we're heavy Slack users. So we actually have a Slack channel called Inside Out. which is actually us living out our core values.
Mm-hmm.
And, I try to be very, aware of what's going on and celebrating, but also doing it in a way that's natural, to where somebody does something and they totally outshine the moment. Like you're celebrating that.
Yeah. So you're calling out the core value.
You're calling out that
in
core
that
value.
Slack.
Yeah. And then the flip side, one of things like the studio that we're in here today, like we had a meeting here that got canceled. I didn't tell my creative director the night before, right?
Yeah.
He calls me at 8:30 in the morning and says, "Where are you?"
I'm sitting in the parking lot.
And I'm like, yeah, I was like, crap, I forgot to tell you that. And so like I called, that was not very generous of me. I had information. I did not give it away. Right. I was very selfish to think like this meeting got canceled. I'm just going to go about my day. Not this meeting got canceled. Who else was going to be there that may not know?
Right.
And how am I going to let them know that that's happened? Like that's an act of generosity. So even being able to be like, hey, that's not living out that core value when you don't inform others of stuff that they need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But so I think there's that. There's I am a fan of visualizing the VTO.
Yes.
So, when appropriate, I love cool ways to celebrate those and get them on the walls. Our co-work landlord would be upset if I painted his walls, right? We have an awesome co-work space. So finding other ways to do that with, internal stuff, collateral pieces, fun merch. There's always cool ways to do it. And I don't think I would say there's not a list of right ways. There are some wrong ways.
Yes.
And the biggest way to do it incorrectly is it is not authentic. You're trying to do the superfluous layer of like, hey, let's just high five on stuff.
Yeah. And so there's other things that I've seen that works well is like, as we're starting to permeate the core values, is use the L10 as a structure for that. So as we're building an L10 team where we have the customer and employee headline section, use that as an opportunity for the team members to call out core values.
Yeah.
And that's like a natural, easy place or where they see the core values falling as a team and how do we as a team live them more. And so if you do it in that setting, it really starts to put some arms around it where it's not just high fives.
Yeah.
Because of this thing in a quarterly meeting, we talk about them high five, but like weekly we're digging in and what went well with this value. Where do we need to step it up as a team?
Yeah.
So like that's a good place to put it as well. But an easy one is a kudos type of a Slack channel or a board where you stick them. But that is okay. Now that is really starting to get them going, right? And then there's some people don't even do that. And then some teams stop there. Now let's talk about going deeper.
Yeah.
Right? Which going deeper is now the tough part because those are all the positive things. But now when it comes down to actually like holding people accountable to the values, that's when they actually grab root.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to interject something. We're going to hold this thread of accountability on core values.
Yeah.
But when I was at Keymark, which y'all hear me talk about that a lot because it's an entrepreneurial company, we got to really build a brand for the inside out. But Jim actually called them kudos. Like we didn't run on EOS, but he celebrated in all the company meetings. So did you know you can't buy kudos anymore? Because we started out like with kudos bars and he would throw them out and then they went away. And they were like, well, it's not the same to be like, let's give a Snickers bar.
For a kudos.
but if you're doing kudos and you found the kudos to you. But I'll go into accountability. You talk about hiring, firing, and promoting, right? And then celebrating all, right? The accountability, I think I'll say as a hiring manager, as a leader, the first accountability starts with the hiring process.
Yeah.
And you're actually holding yourself accountable to make sure that your process communicates what those values are and your team gets to discern whether or not they think these applicants or candidates are actually going to fit that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing that you've got to, not the first thing, that's a important thing is if you're bringing a new person onto the bus, they've got to understand, like, what's that marquee on the bus say? Where's this bus going from a vision perspective? And then who am I going to expect to find on it? Yeah. What are the rules of the bus?
And right? We do I think it's actually one of the first places to go because it starts getting your arms wrapped around how do you actually bring accountability through.
Yes.
So by putting them in the hiring process, what you're doing is you're setting the stage, but you have to back up the stage. You can't tell people this is what the culture is like and then not have it be this way.
Yes.
So like you're creating only accountability for yourself as well by starting there.
Yes.
And so, and there's really neat tools. Like you use the people analyzer tool, like use it as the hiring.
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
I'm interviewing 10 people.
Yep.
I'm going to put everyone in that people analyzer, right?
Yep.
Same thing when I think about the core value speech. Like that core value speech should be written strong enough that when I read that speech, you either have a strong opposition to it or a strong like, oh my gosh, I found my people.
Yeah.
So if it feels too watery and weak, like you got to go deeper. And so like one of the key things that we wrote in our Barracks core speech was on the give a damn core value, where we talked about if somebody from the team calls you, we expect you to pick up the phone. Like that's just part of the culture.
Yes.
That like we are on and we're here to support each other and let's just go.
Yeah.
And so you talk about those things and that should raise some emotion in the person to say, that's the type of thing that I also value. Or, ooh, I don't like that. I don't like if somebody calls me, I have to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be very key on what that is. So dig deep in those.
Yeah, I think so. That's where we've got core values, which there again, this is at an essence level, the 3 to 5 things that 100% of the time are going to be held true. And then those are supported by what does it look like to live that out? And when you live that out, that's what we call behaviors.
Yes.
Right? So like the core value speech for us, even like I did a first draft. I didn't feel great about it. We marinated for 90 days. And I think you were like, you need to do this. And then I went to do it again for the first time. And I found the draft that I'd already done. But I found that after I did it, and I did it in the right time with the right examples, with the right behaviors. And we had marinated it enough that we actually, I read it to our whole team. And it talks about the behaviors. I'm celebrating like when Josh did this, when Hannah did this, like all that. And for us, the close, which is great, is I get to close my core value speech with that's what it's like to work with Wonder.
Yes.
And so our company's Wonder, our domain is workwithwonder.com. It didn't end up, that wasn't like where I started, but you just got to wrap it up. And the team was like, they were like, holy cow. They were like, I have chills. Like they felt that it was right, And I think that but in that speech, there's lots of different values lots of different behaviors that support those values. So I think it really is that these are the things that we hold true. These are the things that are on the wall. These are the 5 things. And now let's find that like, hey, when Josh creates a Slack channel called Lost and Found because Jamie leaves his cell phone everywhere in the office. It's like he's making it happen, right?
Yes.
Like, that's a great way to say, like, thank you. You did something. You're making fun of me. I'm good with that. But like just that going and doing, right?
100%.
So I think that really once you actually when you draft the essence, when you come out of that VB1 and that first quarter, that's what I recommend. Just get a few words and then witness what good looks like.
Yes.
And throw those behaviors up underneath those and start building those lists. And you can then see what it means.
100%.
Because it's very natural to call it out for people to see it. And
yeah, it's so true. And then like one thing that I'll see is we go from VB1 to VB2, and the idea through that 30 days is to think through behavioral situations and can I tie values to these and things that go well and things that don't go well? Can I use the values to help be a driver of all these behaviors and all these situations that occurred? Simultaneously, the champion is doing the core value speech kind of with this. And oftentimes I see that is done in a silo or the night before the next session, right? And then like maybe we thought about them a little bit, but then coming into VP2, we're like, okay, we're going to announce these. And maybe they haven't had enough time to marinate because we aren't actually thinking through them enough.
Yes.
And that's okay. Just know that it's you're going to have to continue to work through them, put behaviors to them, like let them be living, breathing, and keep digging. And then when we move on, where the next stage of where the culture really grabs root is when we really talk about accountability, which we're making difficult personnel decisions and holding our team accountable to the values. So when we don't see the values being led, are we acting quickly within 24 hours, pulling somebody aside and talking about how that doesn't live a value? And helping them understand the importance of the value and not letting things build up and not, right? Because then all of a sudden, if you let it go 3 or 4 times, how do I bring it up now? Right? Where like that's part of the leadership. And, something that Gino talks about all the time is that leadership, one of the things you have to understand about being a leader is you have to repeat yourself often and you have to have a lot of courage.
Yeah.
So if you're not like repeating yourself often and you don't have courage in situations, you're going to struggle. And so it's just like that. This is a perfect example of that, of those two kind of qualities from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, I've recently working with Warren, who's our integrator, and really coming back from the EOS conference with you, where we had a lot of these conversations in the car, and the idea of obsession. Like I'm very clear now in my visionary seat, which, I have I've found in multiple companies, right? I've got some wounds and scars, and, it took me a while to really get comfortable casting this vision because I'm really good at casting a vision, leading people off a cliff, right? But
there's a vision. Let's go.
That's my natural state. But like really using the VTO to get a clear vision that we can all buy into. But I am obsessed on 5 things. As a visionary, I wonder 5 things. The first is vision. The second is values. The third is growth. The fourth is work. And the fifth is EOS. Yes. And I'm telling my team that so that when they understand why I'm talking about core values is because I'm obsessed with it.
Yes, I love it.
And that's the passion that they see that actually gives them the desire to want to be a part of the vision, because vision itself is really good. But by pairing it with values, growth of the organization, and then for us, work, like that's one of the things that it's, we don't have a core value on the work product. That's the quality. We do have Outshine, which is a value, that where that can be lived out.
Yeah.
But we're a creative led firm. Yes. And I'm a creative and I'm passionate. I love this stuff. Right. So like the work itself is something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah.
And that's, when you get into the advertising and marketing space, there's creative led shops, which usually are not very sustainable. Then you've got like account-led marketing strategy shops, which, spreadsheets, docs, and PowerPoints are only so sexy. Right? Yeah. And then you got business owners, right, who own a business that may not be passionate about either of those. And I'm a business owner who really loves strategy, but we are a creative-led shop. We love doing great work. And so I think that's all baked into that. But getting back to the accountability part, you've been through this journey with me, right? I've had to make some personnel decisions.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about it, you talk about obsession again. This obsession with the values. And I think the obsession with the values is so important because if you're not, you let things go too long and you give people the benefit of the doubt when we want to believe that intentionality is pure, right? Which is I believe intentionality is pure out of 99.9% of the humans on earth, right? But there is a moment that we do better when we're up against friction.
Yep.
And so if somebody is showing me that I'm not living a value and I'm the right person, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to step up and say, holy cow, I didn't recognize that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So I am being the right person on the bus. I am asking for you to give me friction when I may not be living that value appropriately. And then the people that aren't that way, and they may give you an excuse or make some, I call them BCDs. So, right, like no BCDs, no blaming, no complaining and being defensive. So if they give you a BCD, right?
So A players don't give you BCDs.
Yeah, they don't give you BCDs.
Yeah.
So if somebody's giving you a BCD, they're not an A player.
Yeah.
Which is telling you they're not the right fit, but you have to show up and you have to have those conversations. Yeah. But our role is to have the conversation and help them understand that it's their responsibility to fix that value.
Yes.
It's not our responsibility to fix the value.
Right.
It's not our responsibility to remove an obstacle for them to live the value. The values are how we always live.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's where we start to see where somebody not living the value, it's if they can't take ownership of it, you're going to bang your head against the wall for a long time.
Yeah.
And we just we got to make a decision.
Yeah, and we had in our last quarterly, it was brought up to me that we had an employee that they didn't think was good for the job.
Yeah.
And as the visionary, I was like, I'm not worried about the roles and responsibilities. Let's hop up to core values. Let's talk about core values first, because it doesn't matter if someone's good or not good at a role or responsibility within their job description, right?
Yes.
If someone's bringing up a performance related thing, my job is to go to values first and just say, all right, let's break this down. Do they make it happen? Do they have courage? Do they have curiosity? Do they have generosity? Do they outshine? And it was actually through that we never had to get down to the job description.
We recognized
we recognized that we actually had a values misalignment.
And I think that there's an interesting thing there, because I remember that conversation in the room, right? And the conversation went like, okay, it's the right person. So now we kind of know our answer, right? And we did some mentoring, try to help, but like ultimately we know that that's not the right fit. But our first reaction was, well, what if we kept them to do this?
Yes.
We're like, whoa.
Yes.
We said it wasn't their seat.
Correct. Yeah.
You're trying to fix it with a seat where it's actually the person.
Yeah.
That there's no seat if it's not the right person.
Exactly.
Right. And so but the human aspect part of the human side of us comes into play. But we have to understand the human side of us is also meaning we're holding them back being part of a culture that they're never going to thrive in.
Absolutely.
No matter what seat they're in, they are not in the best place for themselves.
Yeah. And I think part of that too is that, and it's not a moral or ethical dilemma, right?
Right.
It's not bad person, good person.
Oh,
conversations.
heck no.
It's like just for this team and the things that we value, someone stepping onto this bus has to understand what those values are and has to value those as well. And as much as they may say they do, if the behaviors aren't justifying it and you're having those conversations and it's just a repetitive thing, it's like, this just isn't the right fit.
Well, and they can't be happy.
Correct. Yes. Because expectations can't be met, especially when you're a visionary with expectations.
100%. Right? Like they can't be happy. And so let's find them a place that they can be happy.
Yeah.
And they can thrive. They need to find the values that they share. So we talk about this idea of shared values too, where like you have your own personal core values, right? Like I have my own personal core values. Yep. Then I have family core values that Stacy and I hold together. They are a little bit different, but they're shared. Then I have my job core values, right? And those are shared, that like when I have Susan on the team and we have to share these things, is how we need to operate. So it's the idea of that I need to share these core values that like they align with my own core values. And so like when that misalignment occurs, that's not a good place for me either.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, I think it really is the foundational success of EOS and the VTO starts on that VB1 when you really do break through that and people start having conversations about like, what do A players look like on our team? Like, let's think about those. What behaviors do they have? And you move from this ethereal thing, like we got to have values, put them on the wall.
Yeah.
And you're actually like, wait, we see these. We know that these people are great. Mm-hmm. We want more of those people. Let's talk about not the job that they do, but the how they do it.
100%.
And you start getting that language. And then you realize, like, we have values. Right? It's not that we're making them up. Like you said, they're not prescribed.
100%.
It's like we're getting the language that describes all the good that everyone on the team already loves.
Yeah.
We're just giving them the language where now they're like, oh, now we get that. We can repeat it. We can explain that to other people.
Yeah. And then you can just go so much deeper here.
Yeah.
Right? We can talk about now the difference between right people and right seats, and how if somebody's not in the right seat, it can actually impact their values, and the values can impact their seats, right? And like where people are at. And I think the biggest thing that I would say to just recognize here is that values are like, we have to hold them so tight, act quickly, bring them up, right? Like they have to be that culture, because if we have people that are not the right people, they don't live our core values, but they're high performers, they are recruiting other people in the organization and fighting against you. They are literally fighting against you. Yeah. And so you can't win when you have a mutiny going on.
And those, you just hit, so core values, right, are foundational to the interactions within an organization and a team. And the interactions are brand. right?
Yes.
So I just tie all that back to where people, what is a brand? Brand is an interaction,
Yes.
and core values are the foundation of that. And you're talking about what is that, what is that brand that our organization feels, and what's the language and everything. And, we haven't said this yet, right? But within every culture, there's a little cult, right?
100%.
It's like there is something that we have shared objectives.
100%.
We have shared language. That is a tribe. That is a community, right? And that's the foundation of what core values bring.
Yeah, because
in the
there's this
VTA.
shared feeling. Anytime that somebody asks, if you feel like, well, maybe a little bit of culture, it's probably just a really strong culture.
Yes.
So there's shared value, and we're chasing after things together. So
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. We could sit here.
We could, man. We can nerd
evening.
out on some core values forever.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So, well, cool. I'm actually grateful that you're our implementer, and you led me through our exercise that led us to make it happen, be curious, be courageous, be generous, and outshine. Like that, it was your framework that led us there.
Yeah, you guys did all the work, man.
Thank you.
I just was a guy out there with a marker,
Yeah.
listening.
All right, cool. This has been a fun one.
Absolutely.